I was standing in the cold with my 5-year-old son, bags at our feet, when my mother-in-law slammed the door in our faces. Merry Christmas, huh? All because my brother-in-law showed up and said he didn't want to see me. Please stay with me as I tell you my story, and please do not forget to support our channel by subscribing, liking, and sharing with your loved ones. That morning, I dressed my son in his little red sweater and packed some gifts, hoping Christmas would be peaceful this year. We arrived at my in-laws' place just after 10 a.m. I noticed something felt off right away. My husband had gone earlier to help set up, but when I walked in, no one greeted me warmly. My mother-in-law barely looked at me. My sister-in-law gave a weak smile. Even the cousins, usually so happy to see my son, stayed in the other room. I tried to shake it off and help my son take off his coat. We were barely settled when the front door opened again. My brother-in-law walked in. He hadn't told anyone he was coming. The room went quiet. He saw me and stopped. He leaned in and whispered something to my mother-in-law. She turned to look at me like I was dirt on her shoe. I couldn't hear what he said, but whatever it was, it changed everything. Without warning, my mother-in-law told me, "You need to leave, right now." I thought I misheard her. I asked, "What?" But she repeated it, louder. "Take your things and go." I looked at my husband, but he wasn't there. He had stepped out, apparently. My son didn't understand what was happening. He asked, "Mummy, are we going back home?" I nodded, trying not to cry. I carried our things to the front door in silence. No one offered help. No one asked why. I stepped outside. Then the door slammed behind me, just like that. No explanation, no kindness, just cold air and shame. We stood there, my son shivering, and I realized I was no longer welcome, not just in that house, but maybe in that family too. After that awful Christmas morning, my mind couldn't stop replaying what happened. I kept wondering why my brother-in-law didn't want to see me so badly, that it led to me and my son being kicked out. The more I thought about it, the more one memory came back, one I had buried deep. It was about a year before my wedding. We were at a family gathering, and everyone had been drinking, including him. I was in the kitchen alone, washing some dishes, when he walked in. At first, he seemed normal, just chatty, maybe a bit too much. But then he stepped closer. He said something I didn't catch clearly, and suddenly, he leaned in and tried to kiss me. I pulled away, completely shocked. I asked him what he was doing, and he just laughed it off, saying he was drunk and didn't mean anything by it. I never told anyone. I didn't want drama before the wedding, and honestly, I hoped it would never happen again. After that, he avoided me at every family event. I thought he was ashamed. He never apologized, but he also never spoke to me directly unless he had to. I figured that was his way of pretending it never happened, and I didn't push it. But now, years later, I started to wonder, what if he told a different version of that night? What if he twisted it to make himself the victim? Maybe he said I came onto him, and he was the one who had to stay away. That would explain why he acted like I was a threat just by being in the same room. It would explain why my mother-in-law took his side without asking me any. I kept thinking about how easily people believe lies when they come from someone they trust. He was her son. I was just the wife who married into the family. Maybe he told her something years ago, and she never let it go. Maybe that's why she looked at me like I didn't belong. It made my stomach turn to think he could ruin my life with one lie. I wasn't even angry at first. I was just hurt. Hurt that my silence protected him. Hurt that he may have used it against me. And the worst part? I still didn't know what story he told. But whatever it was enough to get me and my son thrown out like trash. I called my husband right after we were thrown out. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I waited, hoping he'd realize how wrong everything was, that he'd come rushing out to find us. But he didn't. With nowhere else to go and my son getting colder by the minute, I found the nearest motel and checked in. The room smelled like old carpet, and the heater barely worked, but at least it was shelter. My son fell asleep fast, worn out by the confusion and cold. I sat in the dark, my phone in my hand, staring at the screen. Still nothing from him. That silence said more than any words could. He knew. He let it happen. He stayed back to talk to his mother, but the truth was clear. He picked a side, and it wasn't mine. Lying there, I started thinking about all the times something had felt off in our marriage, but I brushed it aside, like when he used to shrug off his family's rudeness toward me, saying I was being too sensitive, or when he'd let his brother make snide jokes about me and never once stepped in. I thought I was imagining things back then. Now, I wasn't so sure. I remembered birthdays where I'd sit alone while he went to his mum's, dinners where he'd scroll through his phone as I tried to talk, vacations we never took because his family needed us. All the small ways he made me feel like I didn't matter. I called them normal marriage bumps, but maybe they weren't bumps. Maybe they were warnings. My chest ached with anger, but more than that, I felt betrayed, not by strangers, by the man I built a life with, by the father of my child. He wasn't just quiet now, he'd been quiet for years, letting his silence cover the cracks in our relationship until one day, everything just split wide open. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if he was asleep back at his mother's house, cozy and full from dinner, while I was trying to calm my son's breathing through motel walls. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe he did, but not enough. Either way, that night changed something in me. I stopped waiting for his call. I stopped hoping he'd make it right, because deep down, I already knew he made his choice, and it wasn't us. The next morning, my son woke me early, rubbing his eyes and asking why we weren't at Grandma's house like we usually were on Christmas. I hesitated for a moment, then smiled, and told him we were on a secret holiday adventure, just the two of us. I wanted to protect him from the truth, that we had been forced to leave and left out of the family celebrations. He seemed excited by the idea, talking about all the fun things we could do just the two of us. I played along, trying to keep the magic alive for him, even though inside I felt hollow. The motel room was cold and bare, nothing like the warm, bustling house we had left behind. I reached for my phone to check messages, hoping for a sign from my husband. Still nothing. No calls, no texts, no explanations. The silence was deafening. Scrolling through social media, I found a new post in the family's group, a Christmas photo. Everyone was there, smiling, hugging, sharing gifts. My husband, my mother-in-law, even my brother-in-law, all happy and cozy, except for me and my son. We were nowhere to be seen. I stared at the screen, feeling invisible. It was like a cruel joke. The family that was supposed to be ours had moved on without us, pretending everything was fine. I felt like an outsider looking in, watching a world I once belonged to but was now shut out from. My son asked again if he could call Grandma. I swallowed my sadness and said maybe later. I didn't want to answer questions I didn't have answers to. He deserved better than this confusion and coldness. The day dragged on. I tried to keep my son entertained with simple games and stories, but the weight of everything pressed down on me. I couldn't stop thinking about the photo, the smiles, the warmth we had lost. I kept wondering what I had done to deserve being erased like this. That night, I lay awake listening to my son's quiet breathing. I realized I couldn't keep pretending this was just a holiday adventure. Something was deeply wrong, and if my husband couldn't stand up for us, I would have to find a way to protect my son on my own. No matter how hard it got, I promised myself I wouldn't let this break us. We might be out in the cold now, but we still had each other, and that had to be enough for now. That evening, I decided to speak up. I typed a message in the family group chat, asking why I and my son were excluded from the day's celebration. I told them how hurt and confused I was after being sent away without a single explanation. I waited, heart pounding, hoping someone would respond honestly. Instead, my messages disappeared, deleted by my husband. It was like I had never said a word. The silence hit harder than the cold outside the motel. I felt invisible, erased from the family story. Just when I was about to give up, my phone buzzed. It was a private message from his sister. She said, "I'm sorry. I didn't agree with what happened today." Her words felt like a small crack in a wall that had been solid for too long. Finally, someone inside was willing to speak out. We started texting back and forth. She explained that she had tried to defend me, but her voice was drowned out by others in the family. She admitted feeling trapped between loyalty to her brother and sympathy for me. It was the first time I realized I wasn't completely alone. Her messages gave me hope. If even one person saw the injustice, maybe things could change. She told me she remembered stories from before the wedding, things no one else wanted to hear, and she didn't believe the lies that had been spread about me. Hearing that was a relief, but also painful, knowing how deep the misunderstandings ran. The group chat remained silent for the most part, but that secret conversation showed me there were cracks in the family's perfect facade. I could feel the tension building, like something was about to break open. Still, my husband avoided me completely. Even with his sister reaching out, he refused to respond to my messages or calls. It was clear he was choosing to stay quiet, hoping the problem would just disappear if he ignored it. But I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I needed answers, and I needed to be heard. The quiet between us was growing louder every day, and it was tearing me apart. That night, As I held my son close, I promised myself I would find a way to get through to my husband and to the family, even if it meant breaking down every wall they built around me. Because at the end of the day, I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for my son's future and for the truth to finally come out. After exchanging messages with my sister-in-law for a few days, I decided it was time to share something I'd kept hidden for years. The night before my wedding, when my brother-in-law made a move on me, I trusted her enough to be honest, hoping she'd understand why I felt so betrayed. When I finally told her the whole story, I expected sympathy, or at least shock. Instead, her face fell, and she looked confused. Then she told me something that stopped me cold. She said her brother had told her a very different version. According to him, I was the one who approached him first, that I had come onto him, and he had to reject me. Hearing that made my blood run cold. It wasn't just a lie, it was the exact opposite of what had happened. The idea that he'd turned things around, making me look like the aggressor, explained so much. No wonder everyone believed him. No wonder my family had stayed silent and sided with him. The story he told painted me as the problem, the one who crossed a line, instead of the victim. I asked my sister-in-law why she never told me before. She admitted she wasn't sure what to believe. She said she wanted to support me, but felt torn because her brother was her family. She wished she had spoken up earlier, but felt trapped by loyalty and fear of causing more drama. The more we talked, the more I realized how deep this web of lies went. It wasn't just a simple misunderstanding. It was a carefully built story designed to protect him and destroy my reputation. I also understood why my husband stayed silent. If he believed his brother's version, he might have thought I was lying or exaggerating. It was heartbreaking to think he could doubt me after everything. This new information gave me a mix of anger and sadness. I was furious that someone I once trusted so much had twisted the truth to hurt me, but I also felt a strange relief. At least now I knew what I was up against. It became clear that to protect myself and my son, I needed to fight back against these lies. I couldn't stay quiet anymore, hoping the truth would come out on its own. The betrayal wasn't just about being thrown out of a house on Christmas. It was about years of false stories and broken trust that had built a wall between me and the family I thought I belonged to. And now, with this secret out in the open, I was ready to face whatever came next. That weekend, despite knowing I wasn't welcome, I decided to attend the family baptism. It wasn't just any event, it was a chance to face the truth head on. I knew showing up uninvited would cause a stir, but I needed answers, and more importantly, I needed to be seen. As I entered the reception hall, eyes turned toward me, whispers filled the air, and tension thickened instantly. I spotted my brother-in-law standing near the buffet, surrounded by family members chatting and laughing. My heart pounded, but I forced myself to walk right up to him. Without hesitation, I confronted him in front of everyone. I told him exactly what had happened years ago and how his lies had shattered my life. I asked why he felt the need to twist the story and hurt me and my son so deeply. He stared back coldly and denied everything. His voice was steady, like rehearsed words from a script. He called my accusations false, claiming I was trying to create drama and damage his reputation. Some family members nodded in agreement, their expressions hardening against me, but others looked uncertain, their eyes flickering between us as the room grew silent. The tension was palpable. I saw confusion, doubt, even sympathy on a few faces. It was like the family was split in two, torn between loyalty and doubt. My husband stood off to the side, watching the scene unfold without saying a word. His silence felt like a betrayal, louder than any argument. I searched his face for support or acknowledgement, but found only cold indifference. The confrontation didn't resolve everything. Instead, it opened old wounds and forced hidden tensions into the light. Some relatives approached me afterward, quietly expressing regret and admitting they had heard bits of the truth, but never wanted to get involved. Others avoided me completely, acting as if I wasn't there. I realized that even speaking out wouldn't immediately fix what had been broken for years. Trust that once existed was shattered, replaced by suspicion and pain. That night, as I left the church, I felt exhausted, but also stronger. I had faced my fears and told my side openly. The family might be divided, and my husband might stay silent, but I was no longer hiding. No matter how difficult the path ahead would be, I knew standing up for myself and my son was the only way forward. It was time to stop waiting for someone else to make things right. The healing Whatever form it would take had to start with me. After the baptism confrontation, I knew I couldn't keep going on like this. The damage was too deep, and my husband's refusal to stand by me made things clear. This marriage wasn't going to heal itself. I made an appointment with a divorce attorney, determined to take control of my life and protect my son. Sitting in the lawyer's office, I laid out everything: the lies, the rejection, the isolation. The attorney listened carefully, nodding as I described how my husband had dismissed my feelings, calling me too emotional and accusing me of making a mountain out of a molehill. He said my concerns were blown out of proportion, that family disagreements happen, and I needed to move past it, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I handed over my phone and computer, showing screenshots of messages, deleted conversations recovered, and even secret texts from family members who had finally spoken up. The evidence painted a very different picture from what my husband claimed. It wasn't just petty family drama, it was a web of deception that had pushed me and my son to the edge. The attorney explained how these records could support a strong case. It wasn't just about separation, it was about ensuring I had custody and the safety we needed. I realized then that what I thought was personal betrayal had legal weight. I'd been silenced for too long, but now, with help, I could fight back. Leaving the office, a mix of relief and fear washed over me. Ending a marriage is never easy, especially when children are involved. But staying meant staying in a house filled with lies and coldness. I couldn't let my son grow up feeling unwanted or unsafe. Back at the motel, I started planning my next steps. I reached out to a few trusted friends and family members who had been supportive in secret. Their encouragement gave me strength I didn't know I still had. Meanwhile, my husband remained distant and confused. When I tried to talk, he avoided me or gave vague answers. It was clear he wasn't ready to admit how broken everything was, or maybe he didn't care enough to try. I knew the road ahead would be difficult. Legal battles, emotional struggles, and rebuilding life from scratch wouldn't be easy. But after everything, I was ready. This wasn't just about ending a chapter, it was about starting a new one, where my son and I could find peace, respect, and a chance to heal. No more silence, no more waiting. It was time to take back control of our lives. Taking the next step, I officially filed for divorce and requested full custody of my son. I couldn't risk leaving him in a situation where his well-being wasn't a priority. With the lawyer's guidance, I gathered every piece of evidence I could find to support my case. One of the most important pieces was the security footage from that terrible Christmas day. We subpoenaed the video from the house's front door camera, hoping it would show what really happened. Watching the footage was painful. There I was, standing on the cold doorstep with my son and bags in hand. The video clearly showed my mother-in-law forcefully pushing me away, shutting the door with no hesitation. The humiliation I felt that day was captured for the world to see. Shortly after, the footage was leaked online by my cousin. At first, I was worried about how this exposure might affect me and my family, but I soon realized it was exactly the proof I needed. The video spread quickly, gathering sympathy and outrage from viewers across social media platforms. People shared the clip with messages of support, expressing disbelief at how someone could treat a mother and child so cruelly. The viral attention put pressure on my husband's family, exposing their actions in a way they couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the story wasn't just mine, it was public. The support from strangers gave me strength, reminding me that I wasn't alone in this fight. In court, the footage played a crucial role. It backed up my claims and contradicted the false narratives they had tried to spin. The judge saw the evidence clearly, and the custody arrangement started to lean in my favor. For the first time since all of this began, I felt hopeful that my son would have a safer, more loving environment. Throughout the process, I kept my focus on what mattered most: protecting my child. The legal battles were tough and emotionally draining, but the knowledge that justice was slowly coming gave me the determination to keep going. Though the situation had caused pain and betrayal, the exposure of the truth was a form of justice. It wasn't about revenge in the cruel sense. It was about standing up for myself and my son, reclaiming dignity and safety. With every day, I moved closer to a fresh start. The past was behind me, and now I could look forward to a future where my son could grow without fear, surrounded by love and honesty. Months passed since everything changed, and I remained in the house that had once felt like a prison. This time, however, it was my sanctuary. The divorce was finalized, and I had full custody of my son. The weight that had burdened me for so long finally lifted, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't realized I possessed. I was no longer running from pain or hoping for a family that had never truly accepted me. With the legal battles behind me, I decided to create a new tradition, one rooted in honesty and genuine connection. I invited the few relatives who had quietly supported me throughout the storm. There was no pretense or forced smiles at this gathering, just warmth and understanding. I prepared the meal myself, pouring love into every dish, savoring the feeling of control over my own life. The house, once filled with tension and cold glances, now carried the soft glow of candles and laughter. My son helped me decorate a small tree, carefully placing each ornament with pride. When he reached for the final one, a simple handmade decoration caught everyone's attention. It read, "Home is where you're wanted." That phrase perfectly captured the journey we had been on. It wasn't about perfect circumstances or having a big family around us. It was about feeling safe and valued, about belonging somewhere without fear or doubt. Seeing my son smile as he hung that ornament, I felt a surge of hope for the future. I smiled too, not because everything was flawless, but because I had stopped chasing acceptance from people who never offered it freely. I learned that sometimes the best kind of family is the one you choose, or the one that stands by you when it matters most. This Christmas was different. It was quieter, simpler, but filled with a kind of peace I hadn't known before. We weren't bound by old wounds or empty traditions. Instead, we were free to build something real, a new chapter based on love, respect, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Do you think I made the right choice by standing up for myself and starting over? Or should I have tried to fix things with my family? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. And if you want more stories like this, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new one.